Ronnie Dickson here from Prosthetic and Orthotic Associates of Tennessee. Welcome,
Howdy, how's it going? Glad to be here.
I am going to go ahead and get my Instagram feed started, guys. I am broadcasting to Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram now. So, because I'm fancy like that. So I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to jump on board while I get this going. All right.
I'll throw a little plug in there.
Go.
If anybody's in the Washington, D.C. area this weekend, we've got our paraclimbing national championships happening in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And sorry, I'm lowering my volume real quick so I don't get the chatter with you. And it's going to be a great time. We have 160 athletes with different disabilities coming from across the country. And there are spectator tickets available. So all that information is available on usaclimbing.org.
Okay. Actually, Ronnie, do you want to put that website into the comment section, please?
Yeah. I can do that.
All right, guys, I'm just jiggling things here for Instagram. All right. I see a couple of y'all jumping on board. Thank you. We got Felicia here. She said, I didn't even know Ronnie was here tonight. Girl, I put it all over the place. Like, you couldn't get away from it. All right,
absolutely.
Here we go. All right.
Funny enough, I have no idea how to type into this chat.
Are you serious? Oh, that's right. I guess you've never really had to do that before. That's usually my job. Sorry, I'm getting Instagram is being a little cranky with me, so I gotta.
No worries.
Redo that. Get that going. All right, here we go.
But yeah, we're super excited. It's the 10-year anniversary from when we launched our program, 10 years ago now. And yeah, our biggest and baddest one yet. So we're really thankful to be putting it on. And yeah, we've come a long way. Our first national championships in 2014, we had 32 competitors. And just to have in excess of 150 is really really huge. So we're excited about that.
Climbers. That is a lot of climbers. All right, we got Randy on board from San Diego. We got Felicia, Brian Bishop. Brian, cheers. You got your Bustelo?
Cheers.
All right, we got Tom McIntyre. Oh, thank you, Tom. Sorry to change it up a little bit. All right, what else we got here? We've got Rob Samuels coming in with his Diet Mountain Dew in Mooresville, Indiana. And let's see, we got Pam from Indiana as well, and another Pamela from New York. All right, guys, I finally got Instagram going. So those of you who are watching me on Instagram, welcome. We got 3 pages worth of questions here tonight, guys. You guys did not disappoint. You guys, you're going to keep my man Ronnie here really busy this
week. I'm going to try our best to get through as many of them as we can and answer some of the questions from the comment section as we go. So we'll try to keep it super interactive, but it sounds like we've got our work cut out for us today.
Yeah, you're gonna be talking a mile a minute. Hey, Denise. Hey, Dave. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and get started. For those of you joining me for the first time, welcome. My name is Cosi Belloso. I'm a physical therapist here in Tampa, Florida. And with me tonight, I have Ronnie Dickson from Prosthetic and Orthotic Associates of Tennessee, prosthetist extraordinaire. All right. And for those of you who are listening to me on the podcast, welcome. Ronnie is my first official sponsored podcast. So I'm kind of, ta-da, there we go. And those of you who are late to the game, yeah, I launched a podcast and a blog, finally. So you can go ahead and access that from my website that I'm typing down, www.cositalks.com. All right, and that is all the shameless plugging that I will do for now.
You're bringing it back with the blog. I remember, when I started getting involved on the internet in like 2008, 2009, blogs were the hot thing, but I feel like they died off a little bit the last, 5 years or so.
Apparently not. And I've done things backwards. Apparently you're supposed to start with a blog and a podcast and then go from there. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll just do things a little differently, but supposedly it's still big right there. All right. So first question's coming in from Kenny. Kenny says, I've been going to the same prosthetist for almost 4 years and would like to check out another group. I feel like I'm not being loyal to them if I do this. Just would like to see if there's something more from a different perspective. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, all prosthetics offices, most of them that I know anyways, all have free consultations and everything like that. And, I don't think it has anything to do with loyalty. I mean, I think you know, at the end of the day, you have to make the decisions that are best for your healthcare, you know, and I understand, you know, being an above the knee amputee myself, that it is very personal. I mean, you put a lot of trust, you put a lot of faith, you know, into that person. And you do build a really, really, uh, you know, relationship where you're leaning on that person a lot for their advice, for their expertise and their help. But, um, you know, sometimes our relationships in life are not meant to be for the long term. Sometimes they're just meant to get us to the next stage. But then when we're at that stage, we might need to open up another relationship that can help us move even further. So, you know, I know we all probably have that significant other or that girlfriend, boyfriend, a partner, you know, that we all think back with really fond memories on, that we knew we were never ever going to end up with. But that person helped us become who we are today, or, you know, during a really formative time of our life. And that's kind of how I always relate it. It does feel like ending a relationship like that. And that's why it's hard. But yeah, no, I would go interview a couple of different people. You might be surprised at what you find. You might find that you truly do believe that someone is in a better position to be able to help you, or you might find that you've been in the right place all along. So
Absolutely.
nothing wrong with taking that step.
Absolutely. Meg from Instagram, I will answer your question in just a moment. Oh, we got another PT in the house. Let me give a shout out to my girl, Michelle Jamin. She's listening in from Instagram as well. And another PT. You got all the PTs listening here tonight, Ronnie. Ed Lyons from Johns Hopkins. Thank you very much. All right, so let's go with this next question. Randy asks from San Diego, I was wondering how much I should wear my shrinker when I'm not using my prosthetic.
Yeah, you know, a lot of it's just going to come down to how much volume management you have to do on a personal basis. So, in the acute stages after having your amputation, I mean, let's just say within the first 6 months of amputation, it'll be really important to, you know, wear your shrinker, especially as a below the knee amputee. As an above the knee amputee, I feel like it's a little less relevant. And yeah, it's just really important to keep that up. But once you're in your prosthesis every day, if you're not having any trouble with, gosh,
Oh gosh. Attack of the flu.
Yeah, the cat, oh my gosh, just almost took down the whole computer. If you're not having any issue getting into your leg in the morning, then really there's no problem. It's really just to kind of help shape it at the very beginning, help bring that swelling down from the surgery, and then, you know, I would only use the shrinker if you're having trouble getting into your leg when you wake up in the morning. It's a great step before you put on your liner to help that happen.
Sounds good. All right. And then Scott is asking, do they make cooler liners than the hot rubber thing I have to wear?
Yeah. So there are some products out there that are marketed with smart temp technology or breathability and things like that. I don't know that there's been a tremendous amount of efficacy to back up any of those products yet. You know,
I feel like,
so
like in Florida, my patients, when they switch to the smart temp, they say that they feel, and is that the Alps one?
that's the Willowwood one. Yep.
The Willowwood, but Alps also has, correct me if I'm wrong, does Alps have a cool liner?
I couldn't say. I personally, I don't use any of their products, but that's a different story.
No, but I've heard like the smart temp, and some of my patients will say, hey, I do feel a difference. And I'm like, if you feel a difference and it works for you, awesome.
Absolutely. So those products do exist. They're out there. To what degree they work, I would say, you know, chances like for someone, it might be revolutionary. And then for the next person, they may not notice a difference. So, you know, just like, you know, when it comes to clothes, you know, somebody might like the way that polyester feels. Another person might be 100% cotton person all the time. Yeah, it just kind of depends on how it interacts with your skin and how you feel with it. But those things do exist and they're out there in certain brands. They're not universal. So like Ottobock doesn't have a product like that. Oser doesn't have a product like that.
Right.
You know, so if you're in one of those liners and you like those liners, you know, you're probably not gonna have too much choice.
Okay. All right. Bobby's asking, I cannot keep the leg on. I'm experiencing it coming out a lot easier. My stomach sweats on the inside, or the liner is so thin it stretches once it gets hot. sorry, it's kind of gobbledy, a little mixed up in this question. When it
Sure.
starts stretching, it releases the suction on my new leg, which I recently got. So it sounds like it's a sweat management issue that's causing problems with the suspension.
Yeah, and like it's worth noting that with these liners, there's different materials that they're made out of. So specifically the thermoplastic elastomer doesn't really react super well with heat, the TPE, the stuff that's just like a
Custom made.
very
Yeah.
jelly.
Yeah.
And so that stretches out over time with heat. That even hardens up over time. I've seen that stuff and it's almost like petrified at a certain point.
Yeah.
Whereas your silicones are going to do a better job maintaining their shape, rebounding to their original shape. So definitely, I'm silicone all the way when it comes to liners. Only, maybe if we have somebody who's going to be sitting all day and, I think it might be better to utilize a softer liner at that point, which is where some of those TPEs could be useful. But other than that, I mean, they're just really not as high quality. That's the only way to put it.
Now, do you find you use the TPEs? Because I see them used a lot for folks who have like burnt grafts on their skin and they have really sensitive skin that's prone to breakdown. Do you still find?
I don't think that's true as well. I mean, because we use, with the custom liners that we make, we use silicone for 99% of our patients. And all that can be remedied. The chafing can be remedied with ointment, So for people who have really bad skin grafting, really bad burns, we just use ointment to cut down the friction between the liner and the skin, and that takes care of it. So,
okay. Scott. Okay. So Scott sent me this story and it was a really funny story. And I asked him, I mentioned it a couple weeks back, but he said, here's one for a good laugh. My prosthetist couldn't get a new bariatric foot this year for my new prosthetic. So we used one of the recent prosthetics and had my foot from my original prosthetic moved. So I just got out before. It's much smaller than the original. So this is where the story gets funny and maybe helpful. My caregiver put the old prosthetic with bright white foot in my closet, no sock or shoe. And I didn't notice it for a couple of weeks until one night in the dark, as I was headed to the restroom, I stopped dead in my tracks and my brain must have thought somebody was hiding in the closet. The plus to this is one of my phantom pains have slightly reduced significantly. So better than mirror therapy.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Thank you for that one, Scott. All right, so let's see, we got Cody. Cody is asking, how do you suggest assessing leg length in a bilateral amputee, AKBK? The patient has lateral trunk lean to the transfemoral side that seems to be exaggerated after lengthening the other side. So it's an AKBK bilateral.
Yep.
You got that? Okay. I had to read that a couple times in my head.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because certainly there's like a lot of asymmetry, going on at that point. Yeah, I've worked with multiple patients in that configuration. Yeah, so they're asking, how do you get over the trunk lean?
Well, there's two ways of it. So it's either prosthetic or PT related. So you want to talk about the prosthetic side of it?
I mean, I'll talk about the prosthetic side. I mean, ultimately, yeah, I could see it. I mean, the last thing that you would want in that configuration, especially since we can't get any plantar flexion out of the prosthetic foot on the BK side, is if anything, we would want to cheat that prosthesis towards being ever so slightly short. And when I say the AK prosthesis, and when I say that, I mean, I'm talking like a 1/16 of an inch. I mean, I want it to be dead even minus
a smidge.
But for it to be tall would be completely heinous. Like that would definitely not be a good position to be in. That would cause the amputee so much more work. Yeah, so I would just want it to be a smidge shorter on that side, because we can't come up on our toes on the transtibial side to help facilitate any extra clearance of that prosthesis, So then with really, really good, strong PT, you could get even and probably feel the same. But yeah, that's how I would cheat it personally.
No, and honestly, when it comes to cases, a complicated case like that, that's one of those rare times where I'm like, let's give them just a smidgen of a cheat. But the first thing that comes to mind is when I see that lateral trunk lean, they have glute weakness. right? So they're leaning over to the side because they can't hike up the hip enough and keep the hips stable. The other part of it is, and this is a lot with my AKs, is they don't like to flex that knee. They're afraid to flex that knee, and it's totally understandable because you have to really put a lot of trust in that prosthesis. I actually had a lovely patient. I'll be posting some videos last week where we really worked hard on getting her to trust that knee and break the knee and flex it and then swing it through the whole cycle, so that she wouldn't trip up over it. But yeah, I agree with the bilateral to give them just a little bit of an advantage there, mechanical advantage.
Awesome. And I guess the last thing that I see frequently with bilaterals is, they teach you in school this BS that doesn't have any sort of real world application, that everybody has to walk with a narrow base of gait, which means that your feet should be really, really close together. And it's just simply not true. I've literally never found it to be true ever. And especially on bilaterals, you can mechanically cheat it. So when somebody's weak and when they're not going to put in the 52 years of physical therapy that it takes to get strong, you can actually outset both of those sides to give them a slightly wider base of gait, and a wider stance is going to lead to more stability. They're not going to be as unstable because they're not going to be falling over on their foot every single time. And, it sounds like a lot, right? But I'm literally just talking a 1/4 inch or so outset, and it's such a game changer. Again, when we do our prosthetics, we always use alignment plates that give us the ability to move our pieces to where we can put somebody in balance. And then when we laminate it, we don't have to have all these ugly connectors on there. It doesn't have to have an offset that takes it, 3/4 of an inch backwards, because we did all the work in our check socket. So, I mean, again, I'll say it here since I'm going to roll tonight. I think anything that has a really major offset on it, outside of that being a mistake, is an atrocity.
Yeah. And I was chuckling earlier because usually in all of my talks where I talk about narrowing the base of support, that only John Wayne can make it look cool to walk with his legs far apart. My exception to that is my bilaterals. Just to give them a little bit more of an advantage, because for me, unfortunately, odds are stacked against bilaterals in terms of being functional ambulators. So anything we can do, including the 52 sessions of 52 years, the physical therapy is at 52 years of physical therapy that we can give them, right, along with any of these mechanical advantages and these little cheats here and there. Let's see, from Instagram, we have Michelle who asks, what company makes the small rock climbing specific foot, not the sidekick? I'm like, I love this.
The rock climbing specific foot is through TRS. They make a model that's going to run probably close to $1,000. There is Evolve Sports actually made a direct to consumer prosthetic climbing foot. And that foot you can buy, like the amputee can just go on the website and buy it straight from them without any middleman, without any prosthetist, for $270.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it like those goat feet that you were using at that rock climbing clinic?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's exactly that. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
So yeah, some of that technology has become really accessible, and it's nice to just put it out there so that somebody can take it to their prosthetist and have them set it up, or they can set it up on their leg, that kind of stuff.
No, I love the direct to consumer. That really helps bring that price down too.
And a lot of these adaptive programs these days that exist around the countries carry a stock of prosthetic feet, and so that could be an opportunity to get your prosthetic provider to go out with you and try rock climbing, and then also have access to some of the adaptive technology.
Okay. Let's see, we got Brian Michael from Instagram saying, can you use a moisture wicking sleeve on the knee under your Willowwood Gel Locking Pin sleeve, especially during summer months? Well, I've got a strong opinion about this, but I'm going to let you take it first, Ronnie.
Say that one more time. I got so in the weeds of reading some of these comments.
We've got some
questions coming up here on the side that we could probably rapid fire a few of them.
Okay, this one, so you can't see the Instagram one, so I'm picking up the Instagram ones here. It says, can you use a moisture wicking sleeve on the knee under your Willowwood gel, especially during the summer months? So he's got a Willowwood Gel Locking Pin.
Yeah. Yeah. My first to that would be, they essentially call them an undersock, you know. So some people will use a sheath ply sock. Other people will use like a Swiftwick sock. You know, a Swiftwick is a brand that sells a little bit of a thicker sock. Some of that stuff's even available in the amputee store. They've got some really, really good resources for sweat management and perspiration and things like that. You have to have a really good fitting socket, and specifically a liner that stays on your leg really well. It is going to change the way that that prosthesis interfaces with you. For some people, it works out. For other people, it's a train wreck from the very beginning. And so the answer is half and half. There's half of the people that could try it, that could probably get away with it. And there's the other half that either will not like the way that it feels or works with their prosthesis, or might find that it actually sacrifices the performance because that liner won't stick on their leg as good as it did before.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
Jeff Zeller said it perfect right here. Jeff's been chiming in with some great comments. A locking pin with liner undersocks allows air into the suspension system and decreases suspension. And that's exactly what happens.
Bingo. Love that one, Jeff. I didn't even think of it that way. But for me, it's more of just like the whole point of the liner is to be in direct contact with the skin. So usually I do a lot of other sweat management tricks before that. And yeah, I have some people that they're like, I wear the liner and it works great. It doesn't cause skin breakdown and it prevents sweat. And it's the best thing since sliced bread. And I say, go and, vaya con Dios. But then with a lot of these folks, I feel like sometimes when you put something in there, it just causes friction and shearing. And can cause blistering. So
yeah, I love Pam's question here. This is down a little bit, but I wear a 5.5 shoe on my sound side. Why can't I get a foot that size for my prosthesis side? So Pam, let me think here for a second real quick. I'm just going to go through and do my mental gymnastics. A size 23 centimeter foot is a 6 men's. So then that would mean that 8
women. Or sorry, 4 women.
Yeah, so 6 men's is 23 centimeters. So that would be a 7 women. Gosh, my brain is dead today. A 5.5 shoe is going to be about a 21 centimeter foot. The short answer is it really, really limits components. There's only a few manufacturers that are going to have a 21 centimeter foot available. 22 is really small for adult sizes, but that's a female 6 right there.
She brought up the question of using a child's foot, and I know there's a much more limited inventory child thing. But the first one that came to mind was the College Park, the Trooper. They have the kid version, and it's a great foot, but you'll be limited in the feet available to you.
It's the weight range that's going to kill you because they only make the pediatric feet in the low hundreds. And then after that, you have to go up to adult components. And this is all off the top of my head. The Ottobock Taleo might have a 21 centimeter option that would have an adult pyramid on it. That's the first one that comes to mind. I would have to jump in, but there might be a foot that exists out there for you, but it's only going to be 1 or 2. And your prosthetist is going to have to do a really big deep dive. But I had to do this on a patient up in Minnesota, and we went with the 21 centimeter foot. So I have that person in a 21 centimeter foot, but we definitely had to get some gymnastics to get around there for sure. So yeah, I might be able to get some specifics on that for Pam if you shoot your email over to Kosi.
So Pam, and this goes for everybody who's on the show, my email is kosi@kositalks.com. I'm putting it into the comments section. So this is where you guys can send me your questions. You can send the questions to Ronnie, and we'll follow up with you and get an answer on this.
Yeah, because there's like 400 prosthetic feet. There's an obscene amount of prosthetic feet. So,
which, by the way, guys, I'm going to interject my next plug. Guess what my first podcast episode was on? Is everything you need to know about prosthetic feet. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, if you haven't read the blog, go after the show's over. Go and read it. All right.
Hold on. Pam said she's 105 pounds, which then opens up our options significantly because we should be able to get a prosthetic foot because they have, even if it has a pediatric pyramid on it, we have pediatric to adult components. Anyways, there's tons of options. So Pam, I still would love to do you the courtesy of sending you a list, at least of what we've used in that range, just because it'll help open up the world for you a little bit. And it is tough to find it.
Yeah, even Jeff is like half-size prosthetic feet just don't exist, and it's actually measuring each foot shell from different manufacturers. Yeah.
Jeff's absolutely right too. An Ottobock, let's just use a standard size, 23 centimeter is going to be different than an Oser 23 centimeter. And that's going to be different than a fill hour 23.
Yep. Bobby says Proflex has a 22 centimeter foot.
Yeah, it's close, but no cigar. We need a 21.
Yep. All right, let's see. We got another Pam on here. I'm reading from the question. Says, why won't prosthetists teach amputees how to make simple adjustments to their legs? And she is an AK.
Oh yeah, with an AK, it's such a rabbit hole.
Let's put it this way, guys. I don't make adjustments. I've been doing this for 23 years. I don't touch the prosthetic leg. I know what adjustments need to be made, but then I call the prosthetist and I have them do the adjustments. So for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I have very, very few scenarios where I'll teach somebody to do something. But it does happen. I mean, at the end of the day, Eric, of course, Eric says he lets me adjust mine. Yes, you do get a read as a prosthetist for, who is going to, kind of go along with what you tell them and who's going to do it anyways. So if someone's going to do it anyways, I mean, I'd rather have them at least be educated about it. I'm a little bit more pragmatic in that sense. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I'm not offended by it. I just want you to be in the best position to succeed with whatever your goals are. So, take my advice, leave my advice. I'm going to tell you what I think. And then after that, it's very much in the patient's hands in my end.
And then the thing is, guys, like for me, it's you adjust one thing here and it's almost like a domino effect, right? When you change the alignment in one area, you're throwing the alignment into a different situation, the rest of the chain. So to me, it's just kind of a rabbit hole, like you said, Ronnie.
Yeah. And Jeff is completely right too, saying that there's a lot of liability there. That's 100% correct. I've always kind of gone by and saying I could be naive that, if you treat someone really, really well, and if you have a good rapport with them, if they do something to their prosthesis, they're not going to come back and sue you. There's certain people that I would never, ever teach that. And that's only because, you get a feel, right? You get a feel for who you can be open and trustworthy with. Anyways, but Jeff's right. I mean, that's the reason why 9 out of 10 prosthetists don't have that conversation with people, is because, they're afraid that if they change something and something falls off or gets messed up and they have an accident, it's going to come back on them. And that's really the true reason.
Yeah. Brian says over 6 years, never adjusted anything. Luckily, someone is always close no matter what city I'm in, and I travel a lot. And David says, my prosthetist says, hands off. Knowing me, that's good advice. That'd be me too. You'd have to tell me to keep my hands off. So let's see. Van Gregory. Oh, there's Van Gregory. He says, what is the pyramid? Ronnie has mentioned it a couple of times.
Sure. That's a attachment piece. So for instance, on the prosthetic feet, there's a pyramid on top, and that will go into, female components.
Yeah, this one doesn't have, I don't have anything.
No, that would have a pyramid on it, but it's just something that we can connect to. And then the tube clamps and the things that connect to the pyramid can angle and move and do those kinds of things.
All right, let's see. We are awesome right now. Okay. Ooh, Scott says, at what stage of gait training do you consider transitioning to a free swinging prosthetic rather than a locked peg leg?
Okay, so that's a great question from Scott. That's a really, really awesome question. Some of it might have to do with K level and activity level. So for instance, if I'm working with someone who's having a really hard time getting out of their chair, and that's something that is difficult, then that's probably a situation that I'm going to use a locked knee in, because when we get that person standing, they already have a lot of weakness. And we want to give that person as much support as possible. They probably don't have the full muscular function to control the prosthetic knee at that point. For anybody who's actually doing walking, so taking steps and doing things like that, I'm never not in a free swinging knee. I mean, that's just the truth behind it. So I hope, I hope that you're getting stronger, and I hope that you're working on being better, with your prosthesis and working into a new physical stage, because if that's not the case, you might just be being held back a little bit personally. I mean,
and that's exactly it. So typically for me as a physical therapist, if I think a person's going to be able to walk with a relatively normal gait pattern using a flex knee, then I start them flexing the knee from the very beginning. We start building those skills from the beginning with proprioception. And yes, we're using assistive devices like walkers or crutches or a cane to keep them safe while they're learning that. I think the only times I've ever used a locked knee is exactly a very low level functioning patient, someone who simply will not be able to walk or stand or do anything without a locked knee, and it's for their safety. But yeah, if that's probably 5% of the patients I see where I have to resort to using a completely locked knee, even for transfers.
And a lot of those patients may not even be at home. They might be in a nursing facility, or something like that, because being at home would be really, really difficult for them to manage.
Yeah. All right. So Tracy says, for AKs, is full ischial containment the only option for a socket if we want to return to long distance running? I love this question.
Oh, yeah.
I've been in an adjustable socket my first year as an amputee, itching to start running again. So far, all of the ischial containment check sockets have felt far too constricting and uncomfortable for my taste.
Yeah. So the short answer is no. I have been doing. Okay. Yeah. I'll say what I was going to say. I've been doing prosthetics for, I don't know, approaching 20 years now. And I've always kind of been doing it at a little bit of with a different point of view, I guess you could say, than most people. And so, I've maybe done five ischial containment sockets my whole career, out of hundreds. So
true ischial containment, where it's actually
true ischial containment. Yeah, I've got 2 current cases right now, which would mean that in my past 15 years, I've done, I don't know, 2 or 3 or something like that. It's literally a pain in the butt. It's a pain in your butt. And with good socket design and good suspension, stabilization of the femur via some of the things that we can do with our designs, a full ischial containment socket just isn't necessary for the majority of people. It gets done because that's what we're taught, but I probably, there's 3,500 prosthetists in the United States, professionals that have this prosthetics or this orthotics credential, and I only know 2 or 3 that can do ischial containment
properly.
Well, which means that it's this holy grail. It's this mythical thing that people aspire to, but they're never. It's like the magic dragon, and if it's just. It doesn't exist, because you're talking about skeletal control of the pelvis using an outside thing that sits on your body. Most people do it really poorly, especially now with all the scanning and the CAD cam that's going on and everything like that, and the lack of hands-on. And the only people that I know that do ischial containment well are hands-on. I mean, they are in there. They are using a high degree of skill to get the ischial containment placed. And when it works, but 98% of the time, I think it's above the knee prosthetics personally.
They can't tolerate it. Yeah. And just for the record, Tracy, just like I said last week, one of my patients, she wanted to go ahead and try running, and I taught her the basics of running. She had probably one of the best subischial sockets I've ever seen. And at first I was a little nervous, but that subischial stayed on beautifully. It stayed on beautifully as she learned how to run, those first basic steps of running. Let's see. Jeff says we may cast and strive for containment, but by the time we adjust the check socket, we modify it out. And that's exactly it. The first thing people start complaining is that.
Man, I am jiving with Jeff today. I mean, he's adding a lot of really great compliments and the things that we're talking about. And I think that's fair. I mean, and there's been this buzz around subischial lately too. And you need a socket that comes up high enough to give you the proper support and stability for your body. So I'm not a minimalist by any means, but what I am here for is for good design. I want someone, when they're sitting in their socket, to be sitting on their own behind. I don't want someone getting absolutely murdered in their medial groin just because they're wearing the prosthesis. so there's a lot to design around, but we can work on all it. And it's the stuff that I get excited about. It's the stuff that I wake up in the morning excited to do, because we can make some really, really good designs, and they're all different for everybody. But it's not subischial, it's not ischial containment, it's somewhere in between. It's where it needs to be for that person.
Where it needs to be for that, exactly. And keeping the good suspension. That's the other, making sure there's good suspension with it. All right. The IG handle is crazy3amp. He asks, I have a problem with my left BK where if the alignment is by the book, I get wounds on the distal end and I have to move the alignment so there's less pressure on the toe so that I don't get these wounds. And he sent me a picture. It's a decent sized wound. He says, my guys don't know why and have even refused to believe me. I have a slight knee contracture that's about 5 degrees, which is not much. And I change the alignment of the foot by adjusting the set of screws at the front of the socket so the toes come up and allows the socket to tilt forwards more than normal. It's a tough one because you can't see it. It's like we can't see it.
No, it's super simple in my mind. I mean, there's very rarely going to be a time where you can tilt the socket so much that that's going to be the reason that it causes you pain or pressure. The socket's causing pain or pressure because something in that socket design is too tight, not relieved enough, not controlling enough, rubbing on that patient to when they're walking, it's giving them irritation, and they want this person to believe that it's the alignment and believe that it's their fault, and almost create that dependency, like, oh, I don't know, it's not us, it's you. And there's a lot of expletives that I could say back towards that when I get really, really going. But so anyways, yeah, no, that socket all day long. I mean, you could wear that socket sideways, and if it fits you, it's not going to hurt you, So that's my opinion.
Yep, agreed. Jeff says, subischial just doesn't control rotation well, in my opinion. And I agree with you, Jeff, but like I said, the one I saw last week was so dang well made. Keep your eyes open, Jeff, because I'm going to start posting videos of this lady. I took her to a conservation park. I took her hiking. I took her up 3 stories worth of ramps. There's this cool tower. That thing did not move. It was awesome. It was awesome. Detour there. All right. Let's see. Next question is Emily asks, what are some challenges you see in people with a lower K level face when working with a prosthesis compared to a person with a higher K level, such as K3 or K4?
Yeah. I mean, that one strikes really close to home, just because, yeah, boy, we have had a lot of those cases come in lately, and transportation is a big issue. Sometimes their caregiver doesn't have the set resources and skill to be able to get them over to the office. I mean, we have a lot of people with transport issues, and that makes it hard for us to go through some of the same processes that we would go through with someone who, can make all of the appointments consistently, and then sometimes the best thing that we can do for that lower level person is get them into a prosthesis as quickly as possible so they can really hit all their therapy, hit all their milestones, use it to help them transfer. So we don't always get the fine-tuning process that we get with our K3s and with our K4s, because I expect our K3s and K4s to be incredibly picky with us, and I want to design something for them that they're going to be extremely satisfied and happy with, and they're going to be walking on it 12 to 14 hours a day, whereas our lower level amputees, it's tough. Yeah, because the feedback's just not there. That person's having a hard enough time standing sometimes, letting alone letting us know what's wrong or what they're feeling. Sometimes they're very, very disconnected from their own body. So yeah, we oftentimes have an abbreviated check socket phase because of that. And we just have to go based on what our visuals are. And even when we deliver the prosthesis, sometimes we're just like, man, like we just didn't even get a good look at that. That person stood twice during this visit today. And we had 3 people looking at it, 1 from each plane, and we did the best that we could during that visit, So it's much harder, I think, in some ways to work with your lower level population than it is with your K3s and K4s. Because if someone can articulate to me what they're feeling, chances are I can fix it all day long. With the skill set and with the particular kind of determination that we have. I'm very, very stubborn. Yeah, with the K2s, yeah, we just don't get a lot, and then sometime, yeah. So
there are going to be more challenges. So yes,
tough.
Emily, because Emily's saying, is it harder for a K1 to use a prosthesis compared to K3? I'm a K1 with spinal bifida and I still struggle with my prosthesis. And yes, and it's coming more from, and Emily, you've shared a lot over the past few months about everything that you're doing working with physical therapy. So in this case, it's not necessarily the amputation that's providing the bigger challenge. It's the spina bifida and the weakness associated with it. We have a question here from Benjamin. It says, I'm a bilateral BK, and this last set of legs that I've gotten, we've gone back and forth because I feel like I keep pistoning on the left and he can't figure out why, and it's very frustrating. Any thoughts?
Yeah. So sometimes, this is my biggest rant with the students these days, is you have to have good leadership in prosthetics and you have to have really, really good systems. These things aren't linear. We're literally making something custom for everybody's body. So sometimes that goes really well, obviously with skill, a lot of times that does go really well, but then sometimes we just miss the mark. And if you're in one of these systems that's not going to let you do multiple check sockets, or that because you're delivered, you can't go back and just start all over again because you want to do better. You might secretly, your prosthetist might be trying to really, really make it work, but the best thing that they could do is just start over again and give it another shot. But they may not be in the position to, or they may not want to. One, because it's a lot of work, or two, because their system would never, ever let them do that. And they're afraid of what the system is going to tell them if they do that. So, because at that point it's a redo. It's not, it's not another billable event. So in our clinic, what happens is when I'm not happy with the way that something turned out and I can't fix it, if the patient has the time, we start back over again, and we go from start to finish and we get it done, because that stuff drives me crazy. I mean, I can't sleep at night. I'm driving my car just trying to have a peaceful moment, and then all of a sudden I think of the atrocity that we committed. We just have we have really high standards that we try to meet. And sometimes for as good as we are, going back to the very beginning and starting all over again is the answer. And a lot of systems don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah, agreed. Kesha, thank you for reposting your question. I know you did this earlier and we skipped over it on accident. She says, I'm not sure how to ask this to make it sound right, but is it okay to walk with a limp without assisted help to gain confidence in order to walk? I'm deeply afraid to walk and worried I'll never get out of my assistive devices if I don't take them away. So you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I can go first on this one. Kesha, 100%. If that's what you need, to get past essentially literally the crutch, I think you should absolutely do it, as long as you're going to be in a safe position to do it, regardless of what your limp looks like, regardless of what, other people are telling you. I've worked with a lot of bilateral amputees, and literally they've had the ones that have the most success. And, this is going to an extreme example, but the ones that have the most success are the ones that take their wheelchair and they put it in the garage and it doesn't exist. They have to get up in the morning, and when they get out of bed, they have to put their legs on and they have to use them, even though they may not want to, because that's the only way that they're going to have that mental shift to be successful. So in your case, if these crutches are the security blanket or whatnot, I would say, as long as it's not unsafe for you to remove them, then absolutely. If that's something that we're leaning on right now, let's take it away and just see what happens for a couple of weeks after that. I think they're good when used in moderation. So for cleaning up gait patterns and things like that, but certainly if you've just plateaued and you might have to take a drastic next step to make it to that next level.
And then Kesha, from the PT standpoint, this is a huge question for patients. And for me, it's a couple of things. If I know that my patient's eventual goal is going to be walking without an assisted device, then I do the majority of my work with them inside the parallel bars. And I try to use the assisted device only as needed, just to make them safe while we get them to being independent with their gait. And if I had to narrow it down to two things, I mean, we could do like 3 shows just on this, on how to get off a walker or crutches or a cane. If I had to narrow it down to 2 things, I would say number 1, the biggest culprit is usually glute medius weakness. So basically the muscles of your butt are the ones that help control the stability. When those muscles are weak, you do not have stability, and it makes it very scary to walk without a cane or an assisted device. Okay. And sometimes using a cane or an assisted device contributes to this weakness, because the cane or the assisted device is the one providing all that stability. Number 2, for my AKs, again, it's the ability to flex that knee and not feel like you're going to stub your toes. Okay. Now there comes a point in time, Kesha, sometimes when I'm working with someone where I have to take away their cane because it has become a security blanket, and I know they have the strength necessary. And I just have to put them outside the bars, put a gait belt on them, hold on to them, and just tell them walk and practice, practice, practice. Once we've reached that point where I know they have the strength, I know they have the coordination and everything else that they need. So Kesha, you're not alone in this, and this is a very common thing.
And Benjamin, don't feel guilty for feeling your feelings. You just got, your job as the patient is to communicate what you're feeling. And, maybe your guy hasn't thought of recasting because he's just trying his best to fix it, and just say, hey, I'm not sure how you would feel about this, but what do you feel about recasting? Is that something that we can do? I know that that you can do it, and I know that you can make this better, but I just wonder if this is just a little off.
Yep. All right, let's go. Andrea, she's my occupational therapist, and she says, what's your greatest frustration as the prosthetist, and has that changed over the course of your career? You're like, which one should I choose?
Yeah. Oh man. If someone wanted an easy job, being a prosthetist is not an easy job, in any way, shape, or form. I almost feel bad for students coming in because they just have no idea what they're getting themselves into, and so I'm here because I absolutely 1,000,000% love what I do, and I love the problem solving around it. There are days where I'm exhausted at the end of the day, and I have, not much left for other people in my life, other things in my life, and that has been the toughest part about it, because you get so absorbed in what you're doing, and the only way to fix these things is to completely take a deep dive into what is the problem and how are we going to come up with a creative solution to fix it, because everybody's body is unique. I'd say my biggest frustration as a prosthetist is my own personal shortcomings of how much effort it takes to go through the process of solving some of these problems. And when I'm on for like 4 weeks, for 5 weeks, for 6 weeks, and it's just one problem after another of things that I legitimately want to solve and people that I want to help, that can leave me like pretty down for sure.
Pretty draining.
Yeah. But I love it. And, I wouldn't change a second of it for the world. But yeah, I guess my biggest frustration is the whole process of just making it right.
Yep. And then her second question is, should all above knee amputees have a computer controlled knee?
There was probably a time where I would have said yes. And, I'm going to probably say not all of them should, but it would probably benefit most of them.
There we go.
Yeah, I think the stumble recovery feature on a microprocessor knee is, life-changing, using it myself. And then, but, some of the mechanical products have improved lately, and some people do prefer them. Sometimes they actually swing easier than the microprocessors. And, but yeah, I'd say I'm still very, very pro microprocessor.
Okay. Jess comments, my understanding after 38 years of having prosthetics made is that recasting is a part of it. I know I don't ever sign off on anything that doesn't work for me, and I've had to have legs recasted and remade. Yeah.
And that's just experience right there. That's amazing experience, and you should never settle for something that you're not happy with.
Yep. Okay, this one comes in from Ed. He's a physical therapist who works a lot with OI patients, and he asks, have you used a microprocessor knee on an above the knee with OI? If so, which OI system and which microprocessor knee, and how did it work out?
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to say this is a place where I haven't had a lot of experience. So I'm going to just choose to pose no answer to that question. I've seen some things. I haven't personally worked with some stuff. In the specific area where I'm at the moment, yeah, we're not seeing a ton of OI just because of, people have so many other comorbidities and medical complications that, yeah, they're just never ever going to be an OI candidate. And I guess, and this isn't a brag, it's just the truth. The K3s and the K4s that I do get are coming from out of the area to see me for sockets. Because they're happy with the service that they're getting. So yeah, I'm just not seeing them.
They haven't
any
come
OI.
to your client. I'm pretty sure they're going to seek you out sometime soon, Ronnie. But yeah, and it's again, the Oprah system just got FDA approval in 2020. So right now it's very specific centers that will serve. My understanding is that any microprocessor knee can be used with OI. And Ed, I know you've got 10 times more experience with this than I do. And I've seen Power Knee, I've seen the Genium, and I've seen a Rio. So that kind of covers like the big, some of the big ones out there. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Denise asks, my question for Ronnie is in reference to places like A Step Ahead Prosthetics. Are places like this considered cosmetic surfaces and therefore not covered by insurance? I have a foam cover over the pylon, so that my pants will hang properly. I don't consider it cosmetic since the purpose was strictly to have something fill the space around the pipe for the pants. Foam is shaped like my calf, covered by a nylon. This was fine when I had pin lock. Now I have suction. Foam is not continuous. There's a break. Step Ahead thinks that I need a cover, and they have a cover that looks like your skin, and it would take care of the gap around the pipe, so the pants issues would be taken care of. I guess her question is, are they all considered to be cosmetic and therefore would not be covered by insurance?
I can answer this super simply. There's 2 L codes, that reference custom shape protective cover, which is generally your shaping, your foam, things like that. And then another one that references the flexible outer surface system, which is your skin or something like that, that would go over top. They're different for BK and AK. So there's 4 total codes, 2 for BK, 2 for AK, that reference the cosmetic cover. Those are going to pay a certain amount towards that service, let's call it. And then they're probably going to tap out, let's just call it, both of those codes put together, somewhere around $800 to $1,000, depending on who the payer is. So yeah, with the Step Ahead doing like all their custom silicone and everything like that, yeah, that's going to be non-covered because it's going to go above and beyond, in excess of probably what something like that's going to cover. So
okay. One Leg Legend from Instagram is asking, how do we fight to get there to be some type of code approved for insurance for remakes? And I'm assuming he means on a socket based on pure dissatisfaction. I mean, I know it's a stretch, but collectively, is there something that could work?
Man, yeah, the remakes is your prosthetist did you wrong, you know? I mean, that's just what it is. And what that means is when you sign the delivery ticket, typically there's some fine print down at the bottom saying you've got, 30 to 60 days or something like that to voice dissatisfaction. And I've heard this so many different times, and it's pretty infuriating. But yeah, your prosthetist should never sign if you're not happy with it, because the prosthetist is only going to get paid on delivery of that service, and then B, um, yeah, they should have enough integrity to say, hey, you know what, like I mean, yeah, you should be able to have a conversation with them and say, hey, I'm really not happy with this. What can we do, and have a productive back and forth on that, as opposed to yeah, just hitting a brick wall. But a remake does not constitute grounds for going through insurance again. A remake, in my mind, means that the job wasn't done properly the first time.
Yep. And then just to put another one on that, we're actually doing a great show on April 3rd where we're going to be talking about the coding system and the reimbursement system with insurance. It's actually the first kind of show I've done on that. So guys, put that one in your calendars right there. Donnie says, training is key. Every time I get a new leg, I have my doctor prescribe physical therapy 3 times a week for 3 weeks. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. To maintain proper gait and strength, add this to keeping my body weight to 200 pounds or less to limit joint stress on my body. Donnie, you are my poster child right there. Ooh, I like this.
All great stuff.
I like this question. David says, new to multi-axial foot, was in a brick foot, a hydraulic foot. Any hints to make the transition easier? Oh, I'm going to jump on this one. So yes, guys, you've heard me. If you've listened to the show for more than 5 minutes, I'm always tooting the PT horn. And I always recommend, first of all, establish yourself with a physical therapist, get to know them. They should be just as much a part of your life as your prosthetist and your doctor, right? Have your initial gait training, get independent as you possibly can. But once you're up and running and things like that, whenever you have a change in prosthetic, whether you get a new socket, a new knee, a new foot, it's always good to give your PT a call. And usually what I tell my patients is, hey, depending on who the patient is, I might do something as saying, hey, send me a video of how you're walking with your new componentry. And if I think there's something that's off, we'll bring you in. When you're switching to a multi-axial foot, you're going to have a lot more movement in the different directions. So with my patients, I just bring them back to the basics. I put them back in the bars, a safe environment, have them do the weight shifting exercises in all the different directions, all the foundational exercises that they used when they first learned how to walk. Do them again. It's basically giving your brain that chance to learn what that new foot or the new knee feels like. You're going to progress faster, right? Because your brain's going to pick up on it a lot faster, but it's good to start with those foundational exercises. That's my soapbox right there. And Ronnie, I know you've probably been through several feet and knees and things like that in yourself. So how do you handle those changes?
Yeah, this is going to be a really big change for David, because that Highlander, what he means by HD is heavy duty. So that's going to be something that's weighted for someone over 300 pounds. And that might be one of the worst prosthetic feet I've ever seen made. The positive about it is it's never going to break. And the negative about it is that it's never going to move, not even a millimeter. So yeah, anything's going to have a lot more motion than that. So it will take a little bit of retraining for sure.
Okay. And then let's see. Hey, Carolyn coming in from Florida. Ashley's piping in. Anytime you get a new socket or foot, you should do gait retraining. I go every summer break for tweaks and helps and break all my bad habits. And my PMR is all about OT. That's my other poster child right there. Jerry, I am so sorry. I did see your question, darling. Let me go back to it. She did post the question. Can a bilateral BK wear Oser Proflex Bulldog feet?
Bulldog might be referring to some of the other components in there, whether that's the locking mechanism or the alignable system. Right. So I don't know that that's relevant, but the Proflex amputee can technically wear anything. But I would just want to make sure as you're trialing this feet, remember that you get 60 days trial on any prosthetic feet. So if something doesn't feel stable or doesn't feel good to you, I would request to be able to try something else. So use Proflex bills with a code of 5981. So most prosthetic feet that are in the K through 5981 feet, meaning that that's what you're coded out for, you probably have access to over 100 so you can talk to your prosthetist, and if the Proflex aren't doing it for you, you could probably find some other feet that are going to feel better. But I would trying a couple of different sets, just hold into the first thing that comes your way.
And guys, I promise you, I did not plan it this way. That's exactly what the podcast, so those of you joined in a little bit later in this show, the podcast and blog that I just launched right now, it's specifically on everything you need to know about prosthetic feet. And I go into detail about the different classifications of prosthetic feet, what they're meant to be used for, who's a candidate, who's not a candidate, and then how to talk to your prosthetist or what are the questions you want to ask them. So CoseyTalks.com, you'll find the link for the blog and the podcast, and also cheat sheets. I have a PDF downloadable so you can take it with your prosthetist just to have a quick reference as you're conversing with your prosthetist. Because here's my thing. I don't know how you feel about this, Ronnie.
Such a great resource.
I don't know how you feel about this, but for me, I love all these names like Highlander, Maverick, Odyssey, like all these really badass names, but they really don't tell you anything about the foot. So unless you're memorizing all 400 feet, I mean, props to the marketing departments, right? But unless you're memorizing all these feet, they're not telling you what these feet are meant to be used for. I love the fact that you put in there, David, that you put in, it was a multi-axial foot. I'm like, multi-axial foot. Yeah. Now I know what kind of foot you have, and you're going to have a whole lot more movement to it, right? And that's what I do in this pod and this broadcast. Yeah, it's getting late.
And it just shows these are our people. These are people that want to be more educated, that care about the care that they're receiving. And this is awesome. I mean, this is all just really good stuff across the board. Suzanne Hogan has a really great question here. What is your opinion on a unilateral knee disarticulation? Are there any advantages? Yeah, so knee disarticulations are certainly a love or hate kind of thing. I personally, I'd say are positive towards them. So things that are positive about the knee disarticulation is you're going to have more proprioception because you actually still have your bony anatomy left down there. So you're going to get a lot of really good lock into the socket. And the biggest adductor muscle, which is the muscle that pulls your leg back in, it's one of the strongest muscles on your leg, is the adductor magnus. And in the knee disarticulation procedure, the adductor magnus never gets cut. Whereas most transfemorals do not have adductor magnus, and that's a big deal. So those are the pros.
And
the cons are that
weight bearing. Don't forget your weight bearing. You can do weight bearing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Distal and weight bearing. So if the surgeon does a good job, yeah, you should feel pretty comfy in the bottom of your socket, being able to put pressure down on the bottom of your leg, which means that you can have lower trim lines because you have a longer leg and you have more control over the prosthesis. But a lot of prosthetists, oh God, had some flashback nightmares. A lot of prosthetists don't know what to do with knee disarticulation. They're like, can they see it? You have to accommodate for the bony anatomy. You have to let it breathe. You have to build around it. And some people treat it like another above the knee and they try to squeeze it. If someone squeezes your bones, it's going to hurt. So you want to make sure that you're with a good prosthetist that knows what to do with it. And you're always going to have a knee center that's not equal, so that's even with someone that does a really nice job tucking that up and bringing that as close to your knee center as possible. You're probably always going to have at least an inch of discrepancy in one knee that's longer than the other. A lot of kneeling on two legs. That's really the only time that it's ever going to really impact you, maybe bike riding or something like that. But other than that, I mean, a knee disarticulation can be a great thing with the surgeon that knows what they're doing and with the prosthetist that knows what they're doing.
Absolutely. And then from a PT standpoint, it's basically almost like working with a below the knee amputee. Just when I think about the most successful, because they're not above the knee, they're not below the knee. It's that in between with a knee disarticulation. But when I see a knee disartic, I'm like, oh, good, we're really gonna be able to do a lot because they've got that nice long lever arm. But yeah, I would say the challenges are with the prosthetic fit and making sure that the prosthetist knows their stuff.
Yeah, and Jeff brought up a great point here, decreases options on components. Here's the thing, if you're like 5'10" and have a knee disarticulation, it's probably not going to matter. If you're 5'2" and have a knee disarticulation, you could find yourself really limiting your choices.
But I still think and I have this argument all the time with another PT, my mentor, between Symes versus a below the knee, and it's because of the prosthetic componentry. But Jeff, yes, if you're done properly, those knee disarticulation, those condyles can help you with the suspension, right? Just grab onto those condyles. Yep. Okay, hang on. Ooh, this is the last one that they submitted. Okay, Don is a paramedic in Vancouver, and he says, what are the thoughts on the XL Pivot Pro? I'm a double amputee, double BK, looking for good working feet as a paramedic.
Oh. Yeah, that might be a different foot that I'm not
I was like,
familiar with. I mean,
myself.
Pivot is generally a product that's Oser, so like they have the Proflex pivot,
Right. So I
like
wasn't
that. So I'm
sure
wondering if it's the XC pivot is what was meant.
maybe what you meant to write. Well, what would off the top of your head, you know, someone who's whoops, there goes my microphone, a bilateral BK, obviously very active individual looking to be a paramedic, going back to work as a paramedic. For a bilateral BK.
It wouldn't be a bad choice. You know, I'm generally only throwing torsion or rotation components on somebody who's, you know, golfing or doing a lot of twisting.
Right.
But
I know I talked to Reggie and he says it's too much torsion for him. And
oh
he's
yeah,
super
So
active.
it might actually be nice in that case to try the XC pivot and also just try the normal XC and see how the difference is. You know, there certainly are cases where having torsion can help, you know, maybe someone who's really bony, it can decrease some of those shear forces coming up into the socket as you turn and as you twist. But yeah, for most people, it might be overkill, but it just depends. It's so specific what feet feel good to some people and what don't. That's why I always try to have 2 or 3 different options for our patients who are going to be able to tell the difference.
Okay. So Don, I'm not sure if you have my email. Here's my email. Send me an email, Don, and just give me a nudge about that. I think I have an idea for you. Okay. I think I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Did you pick up another one?
Yeah. And some people say they like it. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, they can be really, really good options.
Okay. Ashley says, my random question. I have been given the opportunity to try jiu-jitsu and it's all groundwork. I used to do MMA before I lost my leg. Something I should try out?
Do it.
Dang, yeah.
No brainer.
Heck yeah. Go for it.
Yeah. Maybe just like grab a pull noodle or something like that and just make sure your leg is padded, you know, so whenever you kick somebody, you know, you don't hurt them or tear open the bag. But other than that, should be good.
All right. Oh, sorry, Don. Did I put my email in? Sorry. I thought I had, but don't know. Okay. There's my email. And Donnie's like, heck yes, get some. All right. Suzanne says, what elevates someone from a K3 to a K4?
Sure. So for all functional purposes, the only time that having a K4 coding matters for the United States L code system is, you know, there's one code, the high activity knee frame, that gets covered under K4 that doesn't get covered under K3.
Okay.
But even that LCD has probably, that local coverage determination has probably changed a little bit over the years, and it's not a code that we see frequently. What I'm trying to say is that effectively, a K4 is an active child or an athlete, and a K3 is a community ambulator or an active adult. But for coding and the way that you would think for insurance purposes and things like that, there's really, really no big difference between a K3 and a K4.
And until they start
it's just semantics at that point.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably one of the most pointless distinguishments in all of prosthetics. You know, really the big one is K2 to K3.
Yeah.
You know, and that's huge. That's giant. I mean, we're talking life-changing stuff. K3 to K4, I don't even think twice about it. I mean, I guess if someone, I have a construction worker, I have him tagged as K4. I don't know if it makes a difference in getting any of his stuff covered.
No, the only thing I can think of is that if in the hopefully near future, insurances start reimbursing for running blades, that might be the case for a K4. I know that when I do all the functional tests to determine K levels on a patient, once they reach K3, I'm like, all right, we're good. And it's really, you have to get pretty much almost a perfect score on to get up to a K4 level in scoring on those functional tests. But yeah, I don't think I've ever heard someone get turned down for something as a K3. that would have made a difference as a K4. It really, yeah. The only thing I can think of is if you're in a physical therapy world and you're really trying to justify outcomes to get more physical therapy to get a person to their max potential, and you say, well, I can get them to an athletic K4 level.
Yeah, I mean, possibly when talking about one of those, yeah, if someone had a really small insurance payer and you could argue for a sports leg, which is generally a non-covered item, you know, that could help with K4. You know, if someone was going into an X3 or a Genium as opposed to a C leg, you know, K4 could probably be used as an argument because you'd want
right,
to use
the
the
last
running
tip
feature
over
in it.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, so very specific items used, yeah, very infrequently.
All right, guys, I know I'm talked out and Ronnie's been doing twice as much talking as I am, so I know he's talked out tonight.
No, I love this stuff. I could go, I mean, midnight, let's do it. Let's
No.
do the Cozy Talks all-nighter here. We'll sit everybody in and we'll all get hopped up on Mountain Dew and we'll talk about prosthetics.
You're
and,
joking. I'm going to hold you to that one of these days. Maybe when I go give the course in Tennessee.
It's like the old school, like church lock-in, you know,
Yes.
like
My kids are that age now. My kids are doing that kind of stuff right now. Now I feel really old. So no, I'm saying when I go to your clinic to do the coursework in August, we're going to do a 24-hour Cozy Talk.
24-hour show, just keeping the questions going around the clock. It's going to get pretty zany around 3 a.m., you know? I did that once, you know, I've done, they have this climbing competition that's called the 24 Hours of Horseshoe Hell, and it happens at the Horseshoe Canyon Ranch in Jasper, Arkansas, and I've done that 4 times now. It's a blast.
Holy cow. That
Yeah, it's, I love type 2 fun.
The ultra marathoning when they run for 2 or 3 days straight, that's the one that blows my mind. Don't know if I'll be able to. That one blows my mind. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. A huge thank you to Ronnie for just giving of his time and giving of his resources to be here with us tonight and to give us all this information. Takes the heat off of me a little bit, and I know I always learn a lot when he's on the show. So guys, you know, huge thank you to Ronnie. Hit up his website. Go visit his website, Prosthetic and Orthotic Associates of Tennessee. Show him up on Instagram and Facebook. Follow him. He doesn't use it very much, but he will. So in the meantime, go follow him so he has a nice audience to go post to. All right, guys.
Yeah, yeah. If y'all are at Amputee Coalition Conference in Atlanta, I'll be down there. And then if y'all are ever driving through Chattanooga, it seems to be a crossroads on many road trips. Our facility is open. Just come say hi. We love having visitors.
Awesome. All right, guys, as always, thank you for letting us be a part of your lives this evening. I will not be here next Wednesday because I will be on spring break and I'm giving myself the Wednesday night off, but I'm going to be posting some really amazing videos of this wonderful patient I had last week, subischial socket. So Jeff, keep your eyes open. All right, guys, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time, same bat channel. Don't forget to check out the blog and the podcast. Bye.